And about the challenge skill ratio, I think it was like plus 4%, right? Or something. How do you find the sweet spot there when you're like working in front of a computer?
Okay, so that's a great answer. And that let's clarify the plus 4% because you brought it up. This was so Csikszentmihalyi, Godfather of Flow Psychology. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi and a Google mathematician sat down and they were trying to figure out could we come up with and somehow, and I have no idea how. I need to ask Mike. They came up with 4%, and we said, well, that's interesting. Let's try to test it, and we devised a whole bunch of semi crazy, weird little way. Like, I'll give you an example. I took a bunch of mountain bikers and we mapped out in a downhill mountain bike park. We mapped out everything we could do and the heights and the gaps between jumps and things like that. So you could actually measure. You can go, okay, I can clear a 12-foot gap jump, no problem. I get nervous at 16 feet and I won't go over, 16 feet is my maximum, right? So somewhere in between, right? And then you can start measuring. We started doing those sorts of things. And then Austin Eichhorn, another guy we work with, started using it. He trains professional athletes and he was measuring tons of metrics and he took it and a bunch of other people did that. And turns out we're all finding that 4% works really, really well. In fact, I found that when applied to action sports, I did not plateau. I kept getting into flow state after flow state after flow state. Like it really, instead of like a couple big flow states a season and a long plateau, I would really move. What does 4% feel like at a computer is an interesting question. And I mean, let me, I could turn it back on you. You've been applying this stuff at your computer, right? So let's start there. What does 4% feel like to you, Max?
Hmm. Yeah, that's hard. I would say, for example, doing this interview now.
Okay.
It's the plus
You're a
4%.
little bit outside your
First,
comfort zone, but you're not totally
yeah,
overwhelmed, right?
yeah.
That's exactly right. It's what it usually feels like for most people. Feels like that to me. So let me give you an example as a writer. Um, and this isn't always the case because I write nonfiction, but if I'm writing fiction or writing anything that has to do with me at all, where there's a reveal going on, I have found that 4% is the point at which I feel vulnerable, where I feel like I've showed the reader just a little too much of me and like it could come back and hurt me. Like that spot, I'm not totally exposed, but I'm vulnerable. That to me is the level of truth telling that I know equates with A, pushing 4% and B, actually getting the best response in in readers. That's so it's something you gotta train and learn over time, right? And there are certain activities are really useful for it because they come weightlifting, built-in measurement, running, built-in measurement, rock climbing at an indoor climbing gym or even an out sport climbing facility where everything is rated, right? Skiing, beginner, intermediate, advanced, right? Like where you have a rating system that's been pre-established for you. Well, that's a great way to sort of go into that situation. And then, by the way, that 4%, how it makes you feel. Let's say like 4% skiing feels a certain way on the inside, right? That same feeling is going to map onto your writing, is going to map onto your computer, right? What you're trying to do with a lot of this stuff, I think, is you may have heard us talk about the somatic address,
Yeah.
right? The somatic address, how does it make me feel? What's the phenomenology of the sensation? That is often what your guide is. You have to find how it makes you feel, and then you steer by that. You're going back towards that feeling, and we're really good at neurofeedback and biofeedback, right? Like we train really easily on that stuff. You can find a feeling again. I always tell people one of the most powerful things you can do flow wise is if you had a deep flow state during the day as you're falling asleep, try to remember it. Like replay the activity, and you want to keep going, right, until you can get the feeling. You want to lock onto that feeling, and one of the reasons is to lock onto that feeling, you're producing neurochemicals, right? And neurochemicals, if you really want to lay down learning and patterns in the brain quickly, you want neurochemicals. They're much more powerful than neuroelectrical signals in terms of rewiring the brain, right? They're bigger levers. The guy who taught me neuroscience first was a guy named Dr. Robert White. He was one of the great kind of neurosurgeons in the 20th century. And he said, if you really want to understand the brain, understand, neurochemistry, because it's hard to get a big neurochemical reaction. It's like a first principle. In Bold, in Abundance, we talk about first principle thinking, Elon Musk and all that kind of stuff. I often think of neurochemicals as first principles for the brain, like the amygdala response, pattern recognition, big neurochemical. Those things are really big drivers in the brain, so you can sort of use them as first principle thinking. Any of that makes sense?